It is a very heavy thing when you start to feel like someone you love is slowly walking out of your life. It is a kind of pain that is difficult to explain because nothing dramatic may have happened. There may not have been a big argument, no door slammed, no final goodbye. Yet somehow, deep inside, you can feel the distance growing. Usually, your heart notices these changes long before your mind is ready to accept them. You begin to notice little things. The messages feel shorter, the conversations feel colder, the laughter that once came so naturally now feels forced. You keep telling yourself that everything is fine, that you're overthinking, that maybe they're just busy, but there is a quiet voice inside you that keeps whispering the same question. What if something has changed? If you've ever experienced this, I want you to know that you're not alone. In fact, I would love for you to tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and whether you've ever had that feeling that someone was emotionally leaving long before they physically left. Your story may help someone else realize they aren't alone in what they're going through. And if this conversation resonates with you, take a moment to like this video, because it helps more people find these messages when they need them most. Many people believe that when love ends, there is always a clear moment when everything falls apart. But real life rarely works that way. Most relationships don't end with a single event. They end through a series of small moments that slowly weaken the connection until one person is no longer fully present. I'm Mary Smith, host of Senior Mindful Living YouTube channel. Today I want to walk beside you through a difficult but important conversation. We're going to explore 3 powerful signs that often appear when a woman has emotionally begun to pull away from a relationship. These signs are not always obvious. In fact, they are often hidden beneath everyday interactions. That's why so many people miss them until they find themselves feeling confused, exhausted, and heartbroken. Before we begin, I want to share something important. The purpose of this conversation is not to make you suspicious of every woman in your life. It is not about creating fear. It is about understanding human behavior, emotional connection, and the subtle ways people communicate their feelings without using words. Human beings rarely announce emotional withdrawal directly. Most people don't wake up one morning and say, "I no longer feel the same way." Instead, their actions begin to reveal what their words cannot or will not say. And the first sign often appears in a place that many people overlook. She stops investing emotionally in your feelings. Now, this can be difficult to accept because emotional investment doesn't disappear overnight. It fades gradually. Think about the beginning of a meaningful relationship. When a woman deeply cares about you, your emotional world matters to her. If something hurts you, she wants to understand it. If you're worried about something, she listens. If she accidentally says something that upsets you, she usually wants to repair the damage because maintaining the connection is important to her. Psychologists call this emotional responsiveness. Research consistently shows that one of the strongest predictors of relationship satisfaction is not grand romantic gestures, it's emotional responsiveness. It's the feeling that when you reach for someone emotionally, they reach back. Imagine a husband who comes home after a difficult day at work. In one relationship, his wife notices his stress and asks, "You seem overwhelmed today. Want to talk about it?" In another relationship, the same man expresses concern and receives a cold response. "You'll figure it out." The difference may seem small, but emotionally it is enormous. One response creates connection, the other creates distance. As emotional withdrawal begins, you may notice that your feelings slowly become less important to her. Concerns that once led to caring conversations are now met with irritation. Questions that once received thoughtful answers now receive one-word replies. You begin to feel like you're bothering her simply by expressing your emotions. This creates something psychologists call emotional uncertainty. And emotional uncertainty is one of the most painful experiences a person can have. Why? Because human beings are wired for connection. Our brains naturally seek emotional safety from the people closest to us. When that safety disappears, the brain often enters a state of confusion. You start analyzing every interaction. You replay conversations. You search for hidden meanings. You wonder if you're imagining things. You ask yourself questions like, did I do something wrong? Am I being too sensitive? Am I asking for too much? Many good-hearted people become trapped in this cycle. Instead of recognizing emotional withdrawal, they blame themselves. I remember hearing a story from a man named Robert. For nearly 30 years, he and his wife shared everything. Every evening, they would sit together and talk about their day. Then something changed. The conversations became shorter. When Robert shared concerns, his wife seemed distracted. When he asked if everything was okay, she simply said she was tired. Months passed. Robert became convinced that he was somehow failing as a husband. He worked harder. He became more attentive. He tried to create romantic evenings. He bought gifts. He made sacrifices. But nothing changed. Eventually, he realized something painful. The issue wasn't that he wasn't doing enough. The issue was that she had already begun emotionally disconnecting from the relationship. This is why it's so important to understand the difference between normal relationship struggles and emotional withdrawal. Every relationship experiences difficult periods. Everyone gets stressed. Everyone becomes distracted. Everyone has bad days. But people who genuinely value the relationship continue making efforts to preserve emotional connection even during hard times. They may be exhausted, but they still care how you feel. They may be overwhelmed, but they still want to understand your pain. Their energy may decrease temporarily. Their concern does not. That distinction matters. One practical exercise I often recommend is something called emotional inventory. For the next week, pay attention to how interactions leave you feeling. After conversations, ask yourself, do I feel heard? Do I feel understood? Do I feel emotionally safe? Do I feel valued? Or do I consistently feel dismissed, confused, anxious, and alone? Patterns reveal truths that isolated moments cannot. A single bad conversation means very little. A recurring pattern means everything. Another reason this sign is so difficult to recognize is because physical presence can create an illusion of emotional connection. Someone can sit beside you every evening and still be emotionally absent. Someone can text you every day and still be disconnected. Someone can share a home with you while mentally living somewhere else. Many people stay trapped because they focus on physical proximity instead of emotional availability. They say, she's still here, but the more important question is her heart still here? Those are two very different things, and when emotional investment disappears, something interesting happens. You become responsible for carrying the entire emotional weight of the relationship. You start every conversation. You initiate every difficult discussion. You make every effort to reconnect. You become the emotional caretaker for both people. Over time, this creates exhaustion. Not ordinary tiredness, soul-level exhaustion. Because deep down, you know that relationships are supposed to be partnerships. They are not supposed to feel like one person dragging a heavy cart while the other person watches from a distance. There is an old saying that people water what they want to grow. Think about that for a moment. People water the things they want to keep alive. They water their goals. They water their careers. They water their friendships. And when someone genuinely values a relationship, they water that relationship too. They nurture it, protect it, care for it, feed it with attention and effort. When that nurturing consistently disappears, it tells a story that words often hide. Actions reveal priorities. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently over time. That's why one of the greatest mistakes people make is believing promises while ignoring patterns. A promise is what someone says. A pattern is what someone does. And patterns rarely lie. Now let's move to the second sign, because this is where many relationships quietly begin to unravel, and most people don't notice it until months later. The second sign is that your presence no longer excites her the way it once did. At first, this may sound simple, but it runs much deeper than most people realize. Think back to the people you've genuinely looked forward to seeing. Perhaps it was a partner, a friend, a child, a grandchild. When someone matters to you, their presence creates positive emotional energy. You look forward to hearing from them. You enjoy spending time with them. You naturally make room for them in your life. That excitement doesn't have to look dramatic. It doesn't mean butterflies every day. Long-term relationships mature. They become calmer, more stable, more comfortable. But healthy comfort is very different from emotional indifference. When emotional connection is still alive in a relationship, even silence feels comfortable. Even ordinary days feel shared. Even routine moments carry a sense of togetherness. But when that emotional spark begins to fade, something subtle changes in the atmosphere between two people. You start to notice that your presence no longer brings the same warmth it once did. She may still be physically there. She may still respond. She may still go through the motions of the relationship. But the emotional energy is different, duller, heavier, less alive. And this is where many people become confused, because they try to explain it logically. They say things like, maybe she's stressed, or maybe it's just a phase. And yes, life stress is real. Emotional fatigue is real. Everyone goes through periods where they feel distant, but emotional withdrawal has a different pattern. It does not just affect one conversation or one week. It begins to shape the overall tone of the relationship. Psychologically, this is linked to what researchers call emotional disengagement. It happens when a person slowly stops associating positive emotional reward with interaction in the relationship. In simple terms, being together stops feeling emotionally rewarding. So, what does that look like in everyday life? You may notice that she no longer initiates contact the way she used to. You are the one sending the first message. You are the one trying to create conversation. You are the one suggesting plans. And over time, this imbalance begins to feel very heavy, because relationships are not just about presence. They are about mutual emotional investment. Let me give you a real-life example. A woman named Daniel's wife once described how her marriage changed without any dramatic moment. At first, everything was normal. Then slowly, her husband stopped asking questions about her day. He still came home. He still sat at the dinner table. But the curiosity disappeared. No more, "How was your day?" No more interest in small details. No more emotional engagement. She said something very powerful. "It felt like I was living next to someone, not with someone." That is the key difference. Living next to someone is physical. Living with someone is emotional. And when emotional engagement fades, the relationship starts to feel like two parallel lives instead of one shared life. Another important sign of this emotional shift is how effort changes. Not necessarily in big ways, but in small, consistent behaviors. For example, she stops planning things with excitement. She no longer talks about future activities with enthusiasm. She stops remembering small details that once mattered. And most importantly, she becomes less emotionally responsive to your attempts to reconnect. You may try to joke, you may try to bring back old memories, you may try to create closeness again. But instead of warmth, you get minimal reaction. Not always rude, not always cold, but emotionally absent. And this is where many people become stuck, because absence is harder to accept than conflict. Conflict still means engagement. Absence means disconnection. Now, let's talk about the third sign, because this is often the clearest indicator that someone is no longer emotionally building a future with you. She stops including you in her future. This is one of the most psychologically significant changes in a relationship, because the future is where emotional attachment lives. When someone is deeply connected to you, they naturally include you in their plans, not because they are forcing it, but because their mind automatically sees you there. They say things like, "Next year we should go there. One day we should try this together. When we move, when we get older." These are not just words, they are emotional projections of belonging. But when emotional disconnection begins, those words quietly disappear. The language shifts. Plans become uncertain. The future becomes individual instead of shared. Instead of we, it becomes I. Instead of us, it becomes me. And this shift is often subtle at first. She may still talk about future plans, but you are no longer clearly part of them. Or she avoids making long-term commitments altogether. Or she becomes vague when the conversation turns to the future. Psychologists explain this as cognitive separation. It is when the mind begins to mentally detach a partner from future identity planning. In simple terms, she no longer pictures you in her life ahead. And this is often the final stage before emotional detachment becomes permanent. Let me be very clear about something important. Not every moment of distance means the relationship is over. People go through stress. People go through emotional exhaustion. People sometimes withdraw temporarily, but what matters is pattern over time. Ask yourself, is this becoming the new normal? Or is it temporary distance followed by reconnection? Because healthy relationships always return to connection. Even after conflict, even after stress, there is repair, there is effort, there is return. But when emotional withdrawal continues without repair, something deeper is happening. The relationship is no longer being maintained by two people. It is being carried by one. And that is not sustainable. There is a moment many people eventually reach. They stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and start realizing, "I am the only one still trying." That moment is painful, but it is also clarity. Because clarity is what finally breaks confusion. And confusion is what keeps people stuck in situations long after they should have stepped back. Let me share something important with you. Love does not survive on effort from one side. It survives on mutual care, mutual attention, Mutual investment. When one person stops participating emotionally, the relationship does not end immediately. It slowly becomes one-sided, and one-sided love is one of the most emotionally draining experiences a person can go through, because you are constantly trying to revive something that the other person is no longer feeding. At that point, many people begin to lose themselves. They overthink, they overanalyze, they try harder, they become more patient, they give more of themselves. But love is not something you can earn through endurance. It is something that is shared or it is not. So what do you do when you recognize these signs? You do not panic. You do not beg. You do not force. Instead, you observe truthfully. You ask yourself what is actually happening, not what you hope is happening. You look at behavior, not potential. And most importantly, you remember this. Your value is not determined by someone else's ability to see it. If someone is emotionally pulling away, it does not mean you are unworthy. It means the dynamic is changing. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is stop chasing someone who is no longer walking toward you. Because when you stop running after someone who is leaving, you finally have space to hear your own thoughts again. You begin to reconnect with yourself. You regain clarity. You stop confusing anxiety for love, and you stop mistaking distance for your own inadequacy. Real love does not leave you in constant uncertainty. Real love does not make you question your worth every day. Real love does not require you to carry the emotional weight alone. Real love feels like two people choosing each other, even when it is not easy. As we close this conversation, I want you to hold on to one truth. If someone is meant for you, you will not have to chase them to stay. You will not have to convince them to care, and you will not have to beg for basic emotional presence. Because the right connection does not feel like a constant struggle to be chosen. It feels like being chosen naturally, consistently, and mutually. And if you are currently going through this kind of emotional confusion, take a deep breath and remind yourself. You are not difficult for wanting love that is present. You are not too much for wanting effort. You are not wrong for wanting to be valued. You are human, and you deserve a love that meets you halfway, not one you have to drag forward alone. Thank you for being here. And if this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments what part of this felt most real to your experience. It may help someone else who is silently going through the same thing.